So in terms of a board game, this is the question. How long is too long? And in answering that question, I've been looking at some of the recent games that I've been playing, some of the titles that I've been enjoying, cycling out both the usual Fritz favorites, but also some games that I haven't enjoyed in a while for whatever reason. And in playing these games, I found even when I was involved, even when I was psyched to play, sometimes they went a little bit beyond in terms of time and they start to drag on. Now, what I'm not talking about are games like Twilight Imperium. TI is something that you plan the day around. You plan the weekend around. You go into this game knowing this is an epic space opera. I'm not saying you wouldn't do this, but generally speaking, this is not something you bring to the gaming club to kind of play casual for 2 or 3 hours. I mean, I guess you could. I don't think we could finish it in that amount of time, and we're not counting for setup and breakdown. But there are, of course, certain titles, Kingdom Death Monster, another example where it's going to be a lengthy affair. You're going to go in, back in the day, still love it, still play it. Descent First Edition, just core, before we even add in anything. But in looking at some other titles, I'm looking for a term, maybe lightweight titles, those games that say playtime 60 to 90 minutes or 120 minutes. What is that crossover line where it's just too long? Now, a perfect example, Runebound 2nd Edition. Runebound 2nd Edition. Runebound is currently 3rd edition. In true fantasy flight, they've scaled it down. They've decreased the gameplay, and they've made it play quicker. 2nd edition, there's this idea of all the players competing to defeat the end boss. And you got to be leveled up. You got to be ready to go. It is so epically challenging to do this. If you fight the end boss and you get defeated, you lose some of your gear, you lose some gold, you lose some experience. And in a game where we're all competing, that death blow while you're not knocked out of the game, it does put you back significantly. So this creates a feedback loop. And I love Descent 2nd Edition. I was just playing it yesterday with some friends. It creates this feedback loop where the game tends to drag a little bit longer because I have to be really, really sure, especially since it's a dice-based game, I have to be really sure that I'm ready. So from that perspective, I do find I enjoy Runebound, but I find sometimes it drags on just a little bit. So games that are open-ended, meaning they do have an endpoint, but essentially you can go at that endpoint anytime you're ready. I find if there's a competitive edge to it, players will want to level up. They'll want to gear up. The game tends to drag, and it tends to be a little bit too long. When there is a timer put on a game, and of course, you can't just slap down any type of timer. It has to be done correctly. Using an example, Runebound 3rd Edition, there's a timer where it moves forward every turn, and events happen and things change on the board, so they're incorporating the narrative. But with this timer, what you're seeing is you have X number of turns before the end game is forced on you. Ideally, you're going to make the correct decisions. You're going to see what's available, or you make a decision and say, hey, for this game, I'm going to, instead of doing combat, I'm going to build up my social network, and I'm going to get experience and items and gold and stuff like that through that perspective. Maybe that works, maybe that doesn't. You see what kind of character you have. You see what other players you have. Meaning with a timer, yes, you are making informed decisions, but you're not necessarily, you can't grind it forever. You can't min-max it and level it up forever. At some point, you're going to be like, look, we're halfway through the game. Here's where I am. What can I adjust? Let's get ready for that end run. So I look more and more for games that have some sort of timer. Now, another example of a timer would be, I'm looking for the kind of the terminology for it, like a death type timer. That's kind of grim. An example of that, Zombicide. I love Zombicide. The timer in Zombicide is the zombies, or if we're playing Invader, the aliens. The game with spawns, yes, you can get a lot of spawns or minimal spawns, but through the course of the game, every turn, you're flipping these spawn cards. More and more zombies are flooding the table. Yes, you're leveling up. Yes, you're getting powerful. Yes, you can do a lot of damage. But at some point, it begins to really push you to either, look, we've got to run for the objective, we've got to run for the exit, or just, unfortunately, we're not going to make it. So that's an example of another type of timer that, while it's not set like, hey, you have 20 turns, or you have, 5 groups of 5 turns, Zombicide can last a number of turns, depending on a number of factors, but it gears up and the timer pushes you along the way. So games that are too long, and again, pushing out TI, pushing out Kingdom Death Monster, pushing out Descent First Edition, just a couple of titles, or a marathon session like we're trying to get together Space Hulk. And really, we've got 4 Space Hulk sets. So we're going to set up 4 different, we're going to take the tiles, we're going to set up the 4 different scenarios. And as we go through them, when we get to like the 3rd scenario, we're going to set up the next 2. So we're going to kind of cycle through these sets and literally try to play an entire day of Space Hulk and see like what can we make, what can we get through in the game. So discounting something like that where you are actively planning a long game, what makes a game too long, and what are some of those mechanics that can mitigate, change, or prevent that from happening?